Welcome back to Chapter 6. This is Part 2. We're going to begin on Slide 18. That was the last slide that we were on. And I'd like you to take a look on Slide 18 on the left-hand side. Those are essential elements to effective questioning: frequency, equitable distribution, open-ended questions, prompting, and repetition for emphasis. And what we'll do in the remainder of these slides is we are going to go through each one of these, and so that you're aware of these particular strategies for questioning. So let's go to Slide 19. And frequency, we'll start with frequency first. Frequency refers to the number of questions asked. The text points out that effective teachers use a number of questions to involve students. It's important for teachers to make good decisions as to when to ask questions and what types of questions to pose. Asking a number of questions that aren't meaningful or don't lead the students to the objective is not prudent and can slow the lesson pace down. By calling on a number of students, not just those who volunteer, and distributing questions equitably, the teacher is communicating that active participation of all students is important. In many instances, teachers call on those who volunteer or on high-ability students, resulting in passivity among the rest of the students in the class. So from this slide, we can take away the idea that it's important that teachers use questioning in their lessons, high order as well as low order questions, which we'll talk about just a little bit, and that they distribute their questions equitably among all students in the class and not just those who volunteer or raise their hands. On Slide 20, the third strategy has to do with open-ended questions. And by asking open-ended questions, the teacher is casting a wider participation net. Open-ended questions can be more creative and can be less threatening because there can be more than one answer. Now, what types of questions did Mr. Alvarez use on page 176 to 180 that could be considered open-ended? As you look at this slide, you'll notice that open-ended questions are helpful in a variety of ways. Number one, because they're open-ended and there may not necessarily be a right or wrong answer, it invites participation among the students in a non-threatening way. It makes equitable distribution easier when you ask an open-ended question. You'll have more likelihood that students who generally don't participate will participate when you ask an open-ended question. Assures success. It's good for students who lack confidence, and it can be used as an informal assessment. On Slide 21, elements of effective questioning. Prompting. Sometimes students will have a difficult time answering a question or will misinterpret a question. In this case, a teacher can provide a cue, a clue, or scaffold down. In other words, back down the ladder a little bit so that the student can be more successful in answering the question. So if I ask you a question and you don't give me the right answer, rather than moving on to another student or saying, no, that's not right, I could rephrase the question. I can back down to some earlier questions. I can give you a clue or a cue that might give you some insight so that you'd be able to answer the question correctly. Teachers often move on to other students when a correct answer is not given. And what might moving on, why might that not be a best practice? And what might that communicate when a teacher constantly, if a student doesn't get the right answer and the teacher just constantly moves on until the correct answer is given, what does that communicate to students? Let's go to Slide 22, elements of effective questioning. Repetition for emphasis. Using previous questions to encourage students to reconsider a point of view or to bring emphasis to a point of to bring emphasis to a particular point is another best questioning strategy. Sometimes the use of a previous question can help students to refocus on an important point that may have been missed earlier. Let's go to slide 23, and this slide talks about wait time. Wait time is extremely helpful in enabling students to process questions. Research recommends that 3 to 5 seconds be used for wait time, and wait time can result in many dividends for students. And if we take a look at this slide, we can see that most teachers only wait about 1 second between questions and a student response. And again, as we said, research says a teacher should count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 to 5 seconds before they call on someone. Research says that the length and the quality of responses of students increases when wait time is provided. The number of students who volunteer for an answer is most likely to increase when you provide wait time. This is particularly true for minorities. And academic achievement increases when you use wait time. The kind of question, whether you ask a high or low order, and by high order we mean a how or a why, usually a more elaborate response, or a low order question, which is usually a factual response, can determine how long wait time should be. I know myself, I like to think about a question before I answer, so wait time is very beneficial to me. It gives me an opportunity to process and think about different options before I raise my hand to give a particular answer. So wait time is an important strategy. On slide 23, just want to see if you can match the definitions on the left-hand side with the key term, with the key questioning strategy on the right that we've been talking about. Sorry, that's slide 24. All right, so that's a little review for you. On 25, this is entitled Involving Students from Diverse Backgrounds. What do questioning techniques such as equitable distribution, prompting, and wait time communicate, especially for those from diverse backgrounds? So I'd like you just to think about that. You know, what do those questioning techniques or strategies, what do they communicate to students from diverse backgrounds? On slide 26, Classroom Questions, Additional Issues is the title. There are a number of key issues related to questioning. Read each of the issues on the left-hand side of the chart and provide a description of those issues on the right-hand side of the chart. For example, when looking at the high-level versus low-level question, the type of question being asked should be determined by the objective of the lesson. Sometimes several low-level questions that are scaffold may be a better strategy than using a high-order question. See if you can describe the remaining 3 issues. Answers can be found on the next slide. So look at the issues and see if you could describe the issues on the right-hand side. And these are the description of the issues from the previous slide. Let's go to, let's take a look at this for just a second. When we look at the issues, high-level versus low-level questions, the description is it depends on the objective. High-level questions may be more appropriate than low-level questions in some situations. Low-level questions may be better than high-level questions in other situations. So it really depends on the objective of the lesson, the objective that a teacher is striving to reach. Under questioning patterns and selecting students, one way to, sometimes it's hard to remember if you've called on all students. So posing the question, who have I not called on yet, might be a way that you can make sure that you've touched every student or given every student an opportunity to reply. Pose question, then select a reciter or select student, according to research, is the best approach, as opposed to calling on a student and then asking a question. But at times that approach, calling on a student then asking a question, may be appropriate if you have classroom management issues, or if there's a student that you know has not been paying attention, then you might want to use that strategy as well. And call-outs, students that just sort of blurt out, they should be avoided, and the answer is because students that call out dominate and really prevents other students from participating in the lesson. However, there might be some exceptions. When you're doing practice or game activities, call-outs might be acceptable. So you have to be careful with that. Slide 28 has to do with low and high order questions, and again, you can read the research from this slide, and we kind of covered that in the previous slide on slide 27, but please read that. And let's go to slide 29, selecting students. Again, let's look at the slide. The most desirable approach is to call on students randomly. However, if you lose track, you can always ask, who have I not called on yet? And again, you can read the slide, and we've discussed this in slide 27. One point that I want to make here on this slide is that it's important to pose a question, then pause, don't forget to use your wait time, and then select a student. Slide 30, choral responses or call-outs. Choral responses can be effective for practicing skills, terms, and facts that need to be overlearned. Choral responses are inappropriate for open-ended or higher level questions. So you want to be careful on how you use call-outs or choral responses. Now, the last slide here has to do with technology. And your text talks about a student response system. You might have used this system perhaps in high school or maybe in your other classes. It involves a little clicker and a computer. Teacher will put a question up on the smartboard, and then everybody's got one of these clickers, and then they can go ahead and respond to the question, and then the computer will chart. It will determine the number of correct and incorrect responses. So this is one way in which you can involve many students, and students tend to really like this type of approach. It's called a student response system. And the last slide is Chapter 6 Checkup. If you go to Moodle, you'll see the self-assessment, and then we also have self-assessment with answers. So I hope that helps. Okay, and that completes Chapter 6.